Daily is daily Vikings entertainment. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.
I will ride with this group.
Seriously, man. Please.
And away we go.
All right, Purple Daily on draft every Monday right here on the Purple Daily YouTube channel and podcast feeds. This is going to be a heavy rookie minicamp overreaction on Purple Daily on draft. We'll have some more observation as the sports dad, Judd Zolgad, was there also over the weekend, so you can expect that on the main episode of Purple Daily right here on this podcast feed and YouTube channel. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. This is Purple Daily on draft. That's Miles Gorham, Tyler Fornes, Declan Goff here. So, boys, let's start with some rookie minicamp observations. Obviously, we saw the great highlight clips of, JJ McCarthy checking down on Score North's Twitter account, and I'm sure you guys all saw those and overreacted just like everyone else did. But Forno, I guess your kind of initial takes of what we read, what we saw, what we were able to see from JJ McCarthy as he dons his purple number 9, no contact jersey for the first time. What did you notice or see or glean from JJ McCarthy at Vikings rookie minicamp?
I think there were two things. One, the story about at the end of camp, how he made a bet with KJ Cloyd, the linebacker, and then he threw a pick and then he started running gassers because he was wrong. I think stuff like that is good. Shows that, hey, that you can live up to your end of the bargain. You can also have some fun and banter back and forth and then take it when you lose. I think all those are good things. And we talked last week about interceptions. Interceptions don't mean anything. Just it's about learning. Kevin O'Connell told the media, as he said multiple times, every interception is a story. What is the story of the interception and how are you going to learn from it and get better? So I thought that was good. Plus, I thought how he handled himself at the podium showed some real maturity for somebody who's only 21 years old. I think it was Kevin Seifert said that McCarthy was spending a couple minutes before he went up there trying to remember everybody's names. Like it little things like that just show a different level of maturity for somebody who's that young. Like that'd be something that we do, but none of us are 21 years old. And I think those things are good. He handled himself really well at the podium, gave really good answers without, sounding like he didn't know what he was doing or didn't know how to address the media. All those things are good. And, is that going to mean he's going to win us a Super Bowl? Not necessarily, but it's a step in the right direction. And I liked what I saw, the little bits that we got to see. I'm excited to kind of hear Judd on the main episode and hear what he had to see because I wasn't able to be out there. So good things.
So, Miles, when JJ McCarthy's making those interceptions or just getting, practice reps, I think sometimes we see the preseason games as like the real, measuring sticks. It's a game to a degree, but really it's the reps in practice. It's the time at rookie minicamp. It's the time in training camp. It's the observation from coaches when maybe the lights aren't on and when the media isn't there. I feel like those are the more important things, right? When in terms of developing a quarterback and seeing where he's at in his development, it's not necessarily preseason games. It's rookie minicamp. It's training camp. It's those practices where you really get to see what kind of quarterback he can be.
Yeah, and I also think it's just like so early that, of course, it's overreaction season. I think we've already seen. I think I've seen on Twitter or X, if we have to call it X, fine. But it's Twitter to me. We saw a Jaden Daniels and Drake May comparison, like where people are comparing their arm angles and things like that, and like their delivery, and I'm like, you're already overreacting to something off of one clip of anything. Like it could have been a touchdown. Like it doesn't matter, but like that means that those guys are going to be successful or not. But in terms of JJ McCarthy, I think the one thing I've kind of learned from the Vikings under the Kevin O'Connell regime is that they really like, especially young guys that they have like high expectations for. They like to put a lot on their plate early, and that so that they can kind of see and kind of get an education system on like where they are with what they want to do. And then I think that gives them a good litmus test to understand, hey, where are the areas that they really need to like get better at in our system and what we're trying to do? What areas are they already more comfortable in? And like what areas do we kind of not feel like we have to spend as much time on? Now, I think with JJ McCarthy, they probably want to spend time on everything, but there are things that are just going to come naturally for him that he's not going to need as much attention to in terms of like when they're watching film with coaches, when Josh McCown's having his one-on-ones with JJ and stuff like that. So I think in times like this in rookie minicamp, throw a lot at him, see what he understands, see what he knows, and then kind of like get a good litmus test and understand like where you feel he's at. And that could get a good good system for where he goes into OTAs next week, or is it minicamp? I can't remember whatever next week's called, but it's like an off-season program with the whole team. And
OTAs?
OTAs, yeah. Thank you. Is that this week? It might even be this week. But like those types of situations, I think it's really important because like with the rookies, it's a little different than what he's really going to see when the vets come out, because it's going to be a lot faster. There's going to be a lot. The guys already know the system. They already know what they're doing. So where does JJ fit into that system, and like where does he really need to improve going into that situation? And where does he slot in at quarterback? Is he going to be QB4 during these offseason activities in team drills and things like that? Obviously, they'll all get a lot of reps. It's OTAs, like that's what it's for. But how much ramp up does he really need to have before going to training camp, or where does he slot in as they head into training camp? So I think a lot of that, to kind of what you're saying, Declan, is there's a lot that needs to be understood of like where he stands and what he's comfortable with. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I think it's okay to put a lot at him, because I think it just gives a really good barometer of like where you feel he's at coming in. He's only 21. I think what I know what we're going to see when the regular season hits is we're going to hear people compare him to Kirk Cousins. He's not as good as Kirk Cousins. He's 21. Kirk Cousins is the last time we saw Kirk Cousins, he was 35, and he was like 12th year in the league or whatever it was. Like, so like the apples and oranges compare. We should not be trying to compare him to anybody but JJ McCarthy right now, because that's the only person that you can compare him to, because there is no like expectation on him right now besides understanding the playbook, getting to know his teammates, and getting to know his coaches, and just all around the system. So, and being an NFL player. So like I think that's all we need to like temper our expectations to. But I'm also here for the outrageous hot takes, because that's always fun too.
Forno, and both you guys, I do actually have a comp that I'll throw at you guys here that I read from John Beck, who gave an interesting comp to another former NFL quarterback. I'll throw at you guys in a little bit. But so with Josh McCown also there too, Forno, who was a new hire for the system, it feels like I'm guessing here a little bit. It feels like McCown is almost like this second translator in the offense for Kevin O'Connell to JJ McCarthy, right? Like it's a former veteran quarterback who's been around a lot. He was with the Panthers last year, but I mean, I don't really look at his exit as the Panthers as a strike on him. The Panthers are a dump. But I feel like Josh McCown is this kind of bridge, this easy translator to make that offense a little bit more fluent to a guy like JJ McCarthy, to our point, who's just a young 21-year-old dude who was just playing college football, trying to get up to speed, trying to figure out where he is in the pecking order of the quarterback room. I think Josh McCown's influence is definitely going to be a big one here as he develops into a good quarterback.
I think his influence is going to be really big in a general sense. And one of the things that I'm really, really intrigued by is the level of communication that they already have. Because remember, McCown was in Kevin O'Connell's first quarterback's room when O'Connell was a quarterback coach. And then McCown was also Sam Darnold's mentor in 2018 for the New York Jets. So there's a level of camaraderie between the three of them. And obviously O'Connell heard all about Sam Darnold from Kyle Shanahan because they have the connection. And like, I think that's a really good point where you can have two former NFL quarterbacks with a wealth of experience. And obviously McCown started games across over 15 years in the National Football League, including that infamous Nate Poole game, which I'm shocked nobody's asked him about yet, back in 2003. But having those quarterbacks, and Alec Lewis in The Athletic wrote a piece on Friday's minicamp talking about drills. And I think this is going to be really important for McCarthy. They were doing stop routes, 8 yards, stop. And you do that a lot against like off coverage, bail technique. So it gets them to play a little bit different. So you throw an 8-yard stop route. Well, he has a story about how Aqib Talib jumped it and picked him off. So then he can use that to relay it to JJ McCarthy. Okay, you want to lay it in this spot, and you want to make sure you throw it with velocity so it doesn't get picked off. And you want to make sure that you're doing this, that, and the other thing. That kind of stuff is going to be so invaluable, because if the three of us were qualified quarterback coaches, none of us play quarterback at a high level. So we can relate to things, but it's going to be a different level when you have an NFL story to attach to it. And I think that's going to be so great for his development. Plus, you mentioned the translator for the play call. Quarterback like Josh McCown has probably learned 12 different offensive systems. Yeah. So he's going to be able to help figure out what is going to make the most sense for how McCarthy wants these plays called. And Kirk Cousins said it early on in the Kevin O'Connell era. These plays are too long. It's taking too long to get them out in the huddle. We just need to shorten them. And a lot of times you'll give 2 plays in the huddle where you'll hear the quarterback go like kill, kill, kill. And that tells you that we're going to the second play. So all those things are going to matter. And the biggest thing is O'Connell and McCown have a communication and a rapport down. McCown and Darnold have a rapport down. Are they going to be able to get the same quickly with McCarthy? And that's going to be incredibly valuable for his development.
So sticking on those routes and games and stuff, Miles, like are there certain situations for like a quarterback who's coming into a new system that are good for, learning new routes or learning new plays or figuring out like what areas for him to take his first baby steps into learning a playbook? Like, are there certain, is it shotgun? Is it, these 8-yard stop routes? Like what type of plays or what type of situations would probably put a rookie quarterback in the best case? I know you're not Josh McCown, but from your observations, being a former college football player and just in general too, are there situations that will just make that life a little bit easier for a rookie quarterback as he develops?
Hey, I've thrown a couple of passes in my day, so I've thrown an interception too. So I can't. But I think the best areas are like, we know that he's already been in a huddle, which I think is the one thing like people love to make the big deal about, like coming from a pro style system that we love to say in college. But like Jim Harbaugh really was running a pro style. Like it wasn't just about like being under center and running and putting guys in, of course, there goes my computer, running a system, but also, but putting guys in the huddle. And I think that's the big part of it is just because you're doing that doesn't mean you're ready for the NFL. But I think the one thing that JJ McCarthy has is some of that experience. So it makes it a little quicker for him to pick that up. So I think the one thing they can do is put him under center right away and not feel like he has to be uncomfortable there. But I think putting him in uncomfortable situations is okay. Like that's what this time is for. He's going to be, he should, and in an ideal world, there's a few things that he picks up quickly, and then there's other things that he needs work on. But I think 7-on-7 and like a lot of those areas where you're just asking him to, like you said, Declan, run from the shotgun, let him see the whole field, let him make quick, decisive decisions. I don't think that's a problem. I think that is just fine. Like, ask him to make quick, decisive decisions and don't make him overthink. I think when you make him overthink, that just makes it harder for him. And so I think, put him in situations where, like Forno, you even said, the play calling can be very long, like the play calls and like that in itself. They're not going to put JJ in a situation right now where he's going to be asking to have kill plays and 2 plays in the huddle. Like that's just not happening for him right now. So there's no need to like make it like simplify it for him and make him ask him to make quick, decisive decisions and let him like develop that confidence as he moves on.
All right, so I'll give you guys this comp that I saw also from The Athletic. Alec Lewis talked to John Beck, and he was talking about when Beck was with the Washington Commanders in 2011 that Shanahan told him, Mike Shanahan, that is, that I don't need the most athletic guy. I just need an athletic guy. And Beck, who then kind of after his playing days were over, started his own, quarterback development, a training group, and all the coaches, and this is a quote in there, he said, all of the coaches in the Shanahan tree are going to love this kid when talking about JJ McCarthy. And when they asked for a comparison, and this might be a little triggering, I think, for some Vikings fans to hear, it's not Kirk Cousins, but I do think it's a quarterback that Vikings fans know well. The very same things that made Mike Shanahan like Jay Cutler and take him as a first rounder are going to be the same things people in this tree will see when he, McCarthy, comes out of college. Now, I think Jay Cutler, is like this very polarizing QB. As a younger football fan, I despised Jay Cutler. As I got older, I kind of respect him a little bit more. And he definitely, I don't know if that's the best just like athleticism quarterback, because like Jay Cutler had a huge arm, right? And JJ McCarthy, not saying he had an insane he had the diet Brett Favre game to him too, right? He's going to throw into triple coverage because he wants to. But when you first hear the Jay Cutler, JJ McCarthy comparison, at least maybe from an athletic standpoint, Forno, what is your kind of first thought when you hear or see that?
I think it really works until you get down to the mental processing, because Cutler had a lot of reckless to him. He had, as you kind of mentioned, that Brett Favre gunslinger mentality and I call it arm arrogance, where you're just so arrogant with your arm. Oh, I can make that. And you have the ability to make that. That doesn't mean you should. And understanding how to harness that type of arm arrogance and talent with playing really smart football is a delicate balance that a lot of really talented quarterbacks just never quite figure out. And if Cutler was able to figure that out a little bit more, you probably would have seen a lot more success with the Chicago Bears and the Denver Broncos during his time there. So I think it works, but I also don't think it's a 1-to-1. And this is where I struggle with comparisons and using comps, because unless it jumps out, I don't like to use them, because it can set you up for unrealistic expectations. It can set you up for, hey, this guy is Jay Cutler. Well, he's a lot more calculated and a lot smarter with his decision making than Jay Cutler, but a lot of it does work. So, like, when I talked about Chop Robinson, and I think everybody's heard me talk about him a million times, I always used he's got shades of Von Miller, because that first step reminds me so much of what Von Miller had. But there's so much more to his game. It's not a 1-to-1 comparison. I think Thor had the best comp, and that was Rich Gannon, because Rich Gannon, very calculated in the pocket, had the ability to move. And I really wish Denny Green would have just kind of stuck with him, but he was so trigger happy and impatient with quarterbacks in the early 90s. And like, I kind of get it, especially because they were dealing without a lot of first round picks from the Herschel Walker trade. But like, it's just so hard for a 1-to-1. And I think if you're willing to look at it from a big picture perspective and not see it as everything Jay Cutler is everything JJ McCarthy, I think Beck's got a really good point.
So Miles, with Cutler, who was he was a very athletic guy. Is there a legitimate comp there? I mean, JJ McCarthy, Jay Cutler. I think also how they carry themselves is completely opposite, right? Like Jay Cutler, smoking Jay, as you know, I love those memes back in the day. Like, he kind of really just didn't give a damn, and like just everyone was always wondering if he even likes playing football or likes being quarterback. I don't get that vibe from a young JJ McCarthy, who just clearly is like a boy wonder and just loves the spotlight and loves answering questions and takes time, unlike probably Jay does. What is your kind of thought process when you hear Jay Cutler, JJ McCarthy, maybe in the same vein?
I mean, I see some of it, and I think what you project him to be a little bit is he's going to need to let it go a little bit more. He's going to have to take some chances, especially in this Kevin O'Connell offense. Like, we saw Kirk Cousins under this offense be asked to like let it rip a little bit more than he was used to, maybe even more times than he was comfortable with. Take some of those chances. JJ McCarthy's in that way, but JJ McCarthy also has a really strong arm, and he's got a little bit more of a natural like power to his arm that Kirk Cousins didn't have. And some of that can come with like arrogance. Like, guys with big, strong arms, they typically have a little bit more arm arrogance, because they think they can make any throw no matter how tight the window is. Now, I don't know if that's JJ McCarthy, but in college, JJ made a lot of throws where you're like, oh, dude, he threw that on a rope, and didn't always have a lot of touch on it. Didn't always put it in the most accurate spots, but he definitely took chances with his arm because he knew he has a strong arm. And I think Jay Cutler, the JJ.
I know, it's screwing me up too.
The Jay Cutler comp there is like, I think there's a lot of that in JJ McCarthy. I think there's some of that arm arrogance. There's some of that like throws it on a rope at times when you're like, dude, let's put a little bit more touch on it. I'm 10 feet away from you. I'm 5 yards away from you. I don't need you to rifle it all the time. Like, Jay Cutler is definitely that guy that was a gunslinger, and I think JJ has a little bit of that gunslinger mentality when he's asked to let it loose. And I think we saw it early in the season with Michigan. Was it Bowling Green where he threw? Was it maybe 3 interceptions?
Yeah, it was the Bowling Green game. I related that to like a preseason game, just because it was almost like he was trying to test things like you would during the training camp and preseason.
100%. But I think that's where you see some of the, like, when he is really, really wanting to like let it rip, some of those mistakes are going to happen. And I think that's okay. And in this offense, this Kevin O'Connell offense, where he's going to be asked to make tight window throws, take chances, and give guys opportunities, that can also lead to interceptions. And so with that, I think the comp is very similar. I think Jay Cutler would fit into this Kevin O'Connell style offense because of that arm strength and his ability to throw downfield and the ability to maneuver in the pocket and escape and have athleticism. I think all that fits JJ McCarthy. Now, like you both have mentioned, that's like where it ends. Personality-wise, he's not the same. I think JJ McCarthy has probably a better overall head on his shoulders in terms of like, when a coach asks me to do something, I'm not just going to say screw it and I'm going to roll and do my own thing. I think Jay Cutler was I'm my own man, I'm going to do my own thing mentality. JJ McCarthy's a little bit more of a true team guy. So I think there's those like differences, but I see the similarities that Beck was saying.
Another guy that caught Kevin O'Connell's eye over training camp was wide receiver UDFA Thayer Thomas out of North Carolina State. 5 years at North Carolina State. He is 25 years old already, I believe. Let's see here. I'm making sure I have this. Yeah, he's 25 years old, but played 5 years. He also he had a little bit of quarterback in him. He like made some passes. He threw 4 touchdowns in his career. So like he was also this gadget kind of wide receiver, but KOC kind of caught his eye a little bit. I mean, we're in overreaction season here, obviously, Forno. Is Thayer Thomas now already jumping up the pecking order as a guy who could maybe make the 53 as a UDFA?
Say hello to your wide receiver 3. I'm memeing, but at the end of the day, it's not rare to see a player who was on the practice squad take that kind of jump after 1 year in an NFL building. Because, like, unless you're at an Alabama, a Clemson, a Texas, you're not dealing with like super high end facilities. You're dealing with college level facilities. And even if when you go down to like the FCS level, sometimes high schools have better facilities than FCS programs. So all that matters. And then once you get into an NFL regimen where your job is the NFL, you don't have to worry about school. You don't have to worry about potentially having another job, which a lot of these kids will end up having something of some kind. And you can just focus on football. You can focus on getting your body right. You can focus on getting all the nuances down and learning and developing as a player. So seeing that kind of jump in year 2 from a UDFA isn't all that surprising. And I do think it's something to monitor as we kind of move forward. I don't think Thayer Thomas is overly athletic, but if you can get technique and nuance down really, really well, like look at the kind of career Wes Welker carved for himself. Welker wasn't exactly a hyper athlete. Neither was Danny Amendola. Neither is Julian Edelman. But they figured out how to win. They figured out how to maximize themselves. And that's kind of the role that I think Thayer Thomas is going to have to play, which is why I mentioned 3 Patriot slot receivers. I think that's what you're going to ask Thayer Thomas to do at the next level. And you can do that without being a super hyper athlete because you can work on technique. You can work on breaks. You can work on quick feet. And if he's taking that kind of jump from year 1 to year 2, now obviously it could be coach speak from O'Connell, but he's going to be somebody to watch during training camp in the preseason to see if he can make a jump and land on the roster.
Yeah, 24 touchdowns at North Carolina State. And another big thing I think that probably maybe helps his case a little bit here too, Miles. He had 70 punt returns in college. So he's a special teamer. So maybe this is a guy that kind of works his way up. I don't know. Maybe he is wide receiver 3 eventually in our overreaction season. But there could be something here with another UDFA. Like the Vikings have struck gold with these type of players before at different positions. It feels like a guy who's also maybe a little bit more experienced, that's 25 years old, might have a little bit of a leg up on some of these other guys who are obviously trying to vying for the final wide receiver spots and even maybe the starting punt return or 2 on special teams.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like him and Kyrie Jackson could tell the young kids what the 90s were like. So, no, like Thayer Thomas, like all the comps you were saying, Forno, was like the lunch pail guy, like the guy that just gets the work done, the grinder, like that's all the like the funny anecdotes we use and to comp guys like Thayer Thomas. But he really is like a really good like shifty slot receiver who'd be good in like option routes and really good from the slot. I think that's like where he would thrive if you're going to put him in that situation. I think he's twitchy. I don't think he's like overly athletic like you mentioned, but I think there's twitchy there and in and out of his breaks. Think Wes Welker and Danny Amendola. Like if that's what he's going to become, like if he's going to become an NFL player, that's the type of player he's probably going to be like, and how he's going to be utilized. But even Brandon Powell's in that like similar category. Now, Brandon Powell probably has a little bit more true gadget to his game. Like you could put him on end rounds and things like that, and probably a little bit better in the screen game. And obviously, he was the punt returner last year. Maybe Thayer Thomas, if Brandon Powell is going to take more reps on offense, maybe Thayer Thomas wins that punt return job. Who knows? But at the same time, I think I'm also like remembering that like this is rookie minicamp, and Thayer Thomas spent a year in the NFL last year. So I guess my hope would be that he does shine in this type of scenario because he knows the playbook, he knows the coaches, he's been in an NFL system for a year, so he should look comfortable in this situation. Now, when we get into OTAs and things, how does he look there? How does he look versus the rest of the NFL players? Because not every player at rookie minicamp is going to be an NFL player. Some of those guys were on trial basis and they're going to be gone. Some of those guys won't make it through camp, all that stuff. So it's not to say that Thayer Thomas didn't look good, and it's nice to hear that the coaches have recognized it and recognized the work. But how is he going to look versus the rest of the team when the vets come back? Because like I said, I would expect him to look polished versus the guys that are coming in this last weekend.
Yeah, UDFA last season with the Vikings was able to be on the practice squad last year. He was third team All-ACC in 2020. So he's been around a little bit. He's been in the room, and that might help him get a little bit of a leg up. Those are some of your rookie minicamp overreactions here on Purple Daily on Draft. We got to run, but hit that like button, hit that subscribe button for daily Vikings entertainment. You can expect Purple Daily on Draft once a week, sometime mostly on Mondays here on the Purple Daily YouTube channel. We appreciate you guys. We'll be talking at you next week.